Hi everyone, I'm Noah, responsible for the software of 270 Degrees, and today I'll take you on a brief deep dive into lighting. I'll explain how it works and why it's such an important part of visualization. Lighting is arguably the most underestimated element of visual communication, whether it's photography, film, or 3D rendering. Without light, there's basically no image. Light doesn't just determine what we see, but also how we see it. Form, material, textures, and atmosphere are all defined by how an object is lit. In this presentation, I'll take you on a brief deep dive into lighting, why it's such a crucial part of visualization, and how the core principles of real-world photography also apply in 3D. When it comes to product photo shoots, there's a default setup with 3 lights. This is called 3-point lighting, where you have a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. This is all to illuminate your item. And you have first the key light, and this is the biggest one and the most important light, because this one is the main source of lighting. Then you also have the fill light, and this is added to soften the shadow. And lastly, we have the backlight, which makes your item doesn't blend into the surroundings. With these 3 lights, you can correctly illuminate the object while also having control over shading and shadow. This is the default lighting settings while doing a photo shoot. But we can also have this in 3D rendering. On the left side, you see the 3-point lighting in a studio, ready to shoot some photos. But on the right side, it's more of a technical way of showing how the 3-point lighting works, and that is the way we can use it in 3D. Just have the 3 lights on different sides of the object, just the same as you would have them in a studio. So let's see how that works in our 270 degrees viewer. So here we have our 270 degrees viewer, and on the right side is my code. And you have right here the asset name and the lighting we have now. And our traditional lighting is basically the 3-point light. As you can see, we can recreate the 3-point lighting setup in 3D almost exactly as we do in real life. So here on the left side, we have our viewer with the sphere and our traditional lighting. And it's just having the 3-point lighting right now. It looks good, but does it look very realistic? I wouldn't say so. And it also doesn't look very logical. This is because there's one thing missing, and that is called ambient light. In real life, light doesn't just come from those 3 main sources, but it also bounces off walls, floors, and surrounding objects. This creates a natural base layer of illumination we often don't even notice, but that adds subtle softness and realism to any scene. That's ambient light, and it's always present in the physical world. In 3D, there is no physical world. A 3D scene starts always as an empty environment. Unless we specifically add light, the space remains completely dark. There's no built-in ambient contribution, and there's none as there is in reality. To simulate that, we can use image-based lighting, also known as IBL, and this uses a panoramic image as a surrounding light source. IBL uses a panoramic image to simulate the real world of your surroundings that you can use as a light source. This allows the 3D environment to behave more like the real world, adding some soft reflections, global illumination, and realistic ambient light to the scene. This is one example of those images you can use in your 3D environment. This is just a studio, just like we saw in the slides before, but then stretch out, but 3D rendering will fix this later on. It has a 3-point lighting, but also, as you can see, there's more than that. There are some walls and floors, and this makes sure the light bounces off those items onto your object. So while 3D gives us precise control for lighting, it also means we're very responsible for recreating the natural behaviors of light that we usually take for granted in the real world. To show this in our 3D environment, so this extra image, this IBL image, we're going back to our viewer. And as you can see, we still have the sphere with the 3-point light setup. But if we add the panoramic image we just saw in the presentation slide to our viewer, it will look like this. You can clearly see the difference between the 2 setups, and it now looks more natural than with the 3-point light. We can also use this on a product to give you a better vision of what a difference IBL can make. So let's add a different object in here, and let's say it's the boombox. To do that, in our viewer, you only have to update the name of your model. So instead of sphere, we add the boombox. And if I save this, we now have our boombox. This is still with the 3-point lighting. And it looks okay. It doesn't look very natural, but it's there. But again, if I use our studio IBL, you can clearly see a difference. This looks way more natural and more realistic than it did with the 3-point lighting. You basically don't really realize how important ambient light is until you see the difference between the two setups. Of course, we don't just have that one panoramic image available for you to create soft ambient lighting, but we have in our viewer a few more presets ready for you. So here you can see a few of those presets we have available in our viewer. But it's also good to see is that each image, or basically each lighting, shows the product in a different way. So if we have the mug over here, you don't really see that there's a lot of shininess in the mug itself. But if we take the lighting next to it, you can even see some reflection, and you can really see that the mug is shining. So with different lightings, you can see the product in different ways. This is why it's very important to choose the correct lighting for your product, because some images are darker and some are way too light for your product. So each product looks different in different lightings because of the material of a product. Because some materials needs more different lighting to make it more shiny or show you some more details in your product. So with specific lighting, you can create those visuals. Also important to note is that it's not just lighting that makes your product look natural and good. It's a combination of lighting and products. So if we go back to our viewer and use car as an example to see how different lighting impacts an object. So we're back with our viewer. We have the boombox still here, but like I said, we want a car. So if I just change the asset name from boombox to car, and also reset our lighting to our default lighting, which is neutral, we have our car here with just our neutral lighting. It's nice. You see some reflections, some highlights of the lighting. I don't really see many details of the material of the car, but it looks fine. But if we change our lighting to, let's say, forest, which is just, again, one small change, it changes the whole look of the car. You can now see some trees reflecting on the car, but also if I zoom in a bit more, you can see some details in the material now, which you couldn't see before with the neutral lighting. So when you're done with a photo shoot, you usually have to do some touch-ups to get the perfect image of the product. So this can be touching up the shadow, but also smoothing out some lighting reflections or color grading. An example is this image. On the left side, we have the ring basically immediately after the photo shoot. And on the right side, we have the one where it's already touched up after the photo shoot. But they're both photos. They're not 3D renders or anything. They're real photos. But you can clearly see the difference. Because on the left side, we have a big shadow, and they corrected this after the photo shoot. And same with the brightness of the highlights in the ring. So on the left side, we have a very bright reflection and highlights, but on the right side, it's kind of like smoothed out. And they did this all after they did the photo shoots. This is all post-processing, but with 3D, it's harder because it needs to look good from basically every angle. If you have a photo shoot, you can just choose one angle the product needs to look good at, but with 3D, it needs to be every angle. So there's basically no post-processing in 3D. To show you an example of changing the shadow and lighting brightness, I'm going back to our viewer. So let's leave the car and update it to a ring. So update the ring like that. And let's go back to our default setting, the lighting, the neutral lighting. Here we have our ring. But I think it looks still a bit too dark. So if I add just this one line of code, it's already brighter than it was before. We can also touch up the shadow a bit. So let's make the shadow a bit more visible. So let's put that 0.2. You can already see the touch-ups of our shadow, but basically immediately in our viewer. This is nice, but if I have to change everything, it's kind of like hard to see what I'm changing and what's the best visualization eventually. Because now I have to figure out the values by changing it and waiting for the viewer to be done. And it takes a bit of time. So to make things easier, we have a self-service tool we created. And if I go here, we have our self-service tool. I have the same ring here we just saw, and I have a configuration panel here. If we go to our lighting panel, you can here change the different lightings. But let's go back to neutral. And also here I can update the exposure. So before I put in the code 1.5 and I just basically had to guess what the best value is. But in our assets surface, we can just slide it and see what looks best. And the same with the shadow. Before I had to blur and I had to think maybe this looks good, but right here I can just update it. You can really go from like no blur to a blur, but I also can update the darkness. So if I want it to be a bit more lighter, just like that. Another nice thing about our self-service tool is that you can now just copy your code and paste it into your page. So right here we have the code with all the updated values I just changed. And if I copy this, go back to this browser and remove the viewer I had before and paste the code I just copied from our self-service tool, you can now see the ring with the updated values I just changed into our self-service tool. This way it's easier to visualize the product the way you want it without having to guess the values. So these are nice things about 3D rendering. You can do post-processing while you're visualizing your product. So to basically conclude this deep dive, lighting is more than just illumination. It's what makes a product look realistic, clear, and visually appealing. And in 3D, you have full control over that. That makes lighting not just essential, but incredibly powerful. So thank you for listening and see you next time.